StrayAllDay.com.
Now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves anyone out there, including yourself, especially yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. We put all this together in one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one show, one book, one masterclass. And it's this one right here that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is how to pass life's open book test. Yes, you heard that correctly. Life itself is an open book test. I was doing it in IG Live not too long ago, at least from when I'm recording this, and I talked about this as one of the major differences between school and real life, quote unquote. In school, when you have a test or a quiz or any kind of exam, you usually got to put the books away. And back in the day when I was in school, we didn't have smartphones, but now you probably got to put the smartphones away too as well, right? And you have to prove that you know the information by memory or the fact that you actually know it or you studied, etc., etc. But in life, you can look wherever you want. Anytime you have a challenge in life, anytime you are tested in life, anytime you face a problem in life, you can open any book you want to open. You can talk to any person you want. You can Google any website. You can use your smartphone, however you choose. You can get information from wherever you want to deal with every problem that you deal with in life. And let me tell you something that's funny. When I was in school, and any of you who's my age or older, you went to school in the 90s or before the 90s, you know. And actually, even those of you who have been in school since then, when a teacher said that we're going to have an open book test, often we would look around with big smiles on our faces like, oh, this is going to be easy. This is going to be a cakewalk, right? It's an open book test. I ain't got to study for this. I got the book. I can just look through the book and get all the information. And it seemed like it was going to be so easy because it was an open book test. But listen, life is an open book test. It always has been an open book test and always will be an open book test. So is it easy? Is it as easy as it sounds? In school, we would think the open book test was going to be easy. You've been in life for a long time now. Everybody who's listening to this, you've been in life for a while outside of school. Is it as easy as it sounds to have the open book test? Because all of your life is an open book test. So today what we're going to talk about is how you can strategically pass the open book test of life. Because there is a strategy to passing an open book test. It is not just show up, have the book, and just believe that you're going to find the right answers, because you know that, and you've been in life long enough to know that since it's an open book test, that means you should be passing everything perfectly. Is that what's happening? No? Then that means you need a better strategy. And I'm going to give it to you today. Point number one, today's topic once again, is how to pass life's open book test. The first, I'm going to tell you 5 things that you must master. That's the 5 points I'm going to give you here today. 5 skills that you must master in order to pass the open book test of life. The first thing you must do when life presents to you a challenge, and this is, you can take these same principles and apply them to school, any of you who's in school and there's an open book test coming up. First question is, which book do you look in? I mean, think about it. Think about the last challenge that you faced, or whatever challenge you're facing right now in life. How do you solve this challenge? And you don't have the answer. All right, you don't know the answer, and you know that you don't know the answer. Where do you look to get help? Let's say you're running a business and your business is not doing as well as you want it to do, and you want some help with your business. Well, how many people will be willing to help you? How many books claim to have information? How many podcasts are there talking about business? How many Instagrammers are giving tips about business every single day on their Instagram page? How many YouTube channels are there about how to step up your business? There are literally millions of damn near every single one of them. How do you know which one to actually look at? How do you know which person to listen to? How do you know which coaching program to sign up for? Which person to even have a conversation with? How do you know which book to read? How do you know which website to Google? How do you know which podcast to subscribe to? You can't listen to them all or read all the books or talking to every person, get coached by everybody all at the same time. You don't have enough time in your life to do that. So the first question you got to answer, even though we know that having an open book is a great concept, there are so many books out there, you got to figure out where to begin. Where do I start? Google, the website, has indexed all of the searchable information that has ever been created on the internet. It's all indexed in there in Google. The challenge though, even though Google has all the information, you could literally get all the information you need in life just by Googling. The challenge with that is, if you don't know what to search for you're going to have a serious problem, because there are way too many pieces of information out there for you to just randomly start looking around and hoping that you'll stumble across what you need. So it is much more important than having the right information is knowing which information to access, where to look for information. In my masterclass, Hard Work Ain't Enough, if you haven't taken that masterclass, I give it to you for free at hardworkaintenough.com. If you haven't been there, that's hardworkaintenough.com. I tell you, the very first element of creating success in life, outside of working hard, which a lot of people think is the key to success, it is not. The first element is choosing wisely. So you have access to Google. Everybody who's listening to this got access to Google. Everybody on here have been on Google before, right? Or DuckDuckGo or Bing or whatever search engine you use, okay? Those search engines have access to every website that exists. All the information that is freely available on the web is available through those websites. Problem, you gotta know where to look. You gotta know what to search for. Any of you ever been trying to Google something and couldn't find it just because you didn't know what to search for? It's not because it wasn't there, it's just you didn't know what to search for. I remember I did a keynote speech in Texas and two years ago, 2019, when well, not 2 years ago, a year and a half or so ago. It was recent. It was shortly after, right around the time my book Work On Your Game came out. And the guy who had booked me, he said that he had saw me on somebody else's show. I had been on someone's live stream, like doing an interview months before, probably a year before this guy actually had me on. And he said, man, I heard you on there and I kept a note of you in my mind that I wanted to book you to do something for us, but we didn't have an event coming up that we needed you for until almost a year later. But he hadn't written down my name or taken note of my name or followed me anywhere or anything. He just remembered that he heard me and saw me and he liked me. So then I said, oh, all right, so you remember me from there? He said, well, yeah, I kind of remembered you from there, but I couldn't remember your name. So he was like, when he was finally looking for speakers for this event, he told his assistants who he was looking for, but he didn't know my name. So he was like, yeah, it was this guy, he was on this show and he was talking about this and this and he was saying these things, and his assistants were looking for people and looking and bringing him people. He was like, no, that's not him, that's not him, that's not him. And finally he came up with some Google search. He couldn't even remember what the search was. So this guy didn't have the best memory. But he said, I finally searched something and you popped up, and I said, yes, that's him, that's the guy. And then they contacted me, they booked me, and I went and did the speech, and the rest is history. The whole point is this: if he couldn't have figured out what to search, he would never have found me. So just because you have access to Google, which literally has access to everything online, doesn't mean you're gonna have the right information. Remember a couple years ago, I had a car issue. Not the car that I drive now, but I had a car issue. This is probably 7, 8, maybe 9 years ago. And it was the car would not, when I would put it from drive to park to reverse, et cetera, it wasn't shifting gears properly. And what the mechanic told me, not the mechanic, but like the AAA guy, he came and helped me because my car had stalled out somewhere. I think I was at an airport or something. The car stalled out. I couldn't get it to get in the drive, even though the car was running perfectly. He told me that, hey, there's a little piece here that's broken. You need to get that piece replaced. I asked him what's the name of the piece. He didn't know the name of the piece. And this is just a AAA guy. He wasn't an auto mechanic. So anyway, he was able to fix it enough. He was enough of a mechanic to fix it, but he didn't know what the piece was called. So I get the car home to my house and I'm trying to figure out what is this piece that needs to replace it? Because he showed me where under the car the issue was happening. So I went and slid under the car, and I'm not a car guy at all. I don't recognize cars. Don't ask me what kind of car is this or that. I don't know. I can't tell what a car is unless I look at the little name on the back. And I don't know anything about under the hood or the undercarriage of cars. Zero. So I'm going under the car. I'm looking at the little part that he's telling me somewhere is missing. You could tell it's a small piece. So it seemed like all I needed to do was get this little tiny piece and the car was gonna be working. But here was the problem. I didn't know what the piece was called. He didn't know what the piece was called. I called my father, who knows the underside of cars a lot better than I do. He didn't know what the piece was called. He didn't have the same car as me, so he didn't know what the piece was called. I started Googling around and I finally was able to figure out the name of this little tiny piece. It was a little tiny piece of rubber / plastic melded together. This piece cost all of $2. I bought this thing off eBay for $2. It wasn't even $2. And I got the piece, put it on my car. I waited 2 days for it to come in the mail, put the little piece on my car, and then the car ran perfectly. Everything was perfect after that. Never had another problem with that car. But until I knew the name of the piece, this missing $2 part was costing me a whole lot of time simply because I didn't know where to search. So the number one thing you must understand about an open book test is you got to know where to look. Point number 2. Today's topic is how to pass the open book test of life. Number 2, which page do you turn to? You got to understand, books can be very long and they can have lots of information in them. So you don't have time to read through every single page of every single book. So you got to know where to look when you're reading a book. So even when you go on Google, let's say you know where to search. You know where to search, and you find, Wikipedia is where I need to go. I need to go to the Wikipedia entry for the United States of America. Okay, now what part of that entry do you need to read? Now, some Wikipedia pages are pretty short. Some of them can be very damn long. Are you going to read the whole page, or are you looking for a specific piece of information? The problem is, if you don't know which piece of information you are looking for, you could be staring at that book all day. It's the right book, but you have no idea which chapter of the book to read. Which piece of information out of that book do you actually want? And not knowing that can cost you the entire test. I'll tell you a story of once. There was this FedEx plant in, I believe it was Memphis, Tennessee. I think that's where FedEx is based out of. But there was a FedEx plant in Memphis, and it shut down. Now, everybody knows what FedEx is, right? Federal Express is a company that basically guarantees that you can get a package, overnight it, or get it to a certain place by a certain date, and they guarantee it. So if they don't do it, then first of all, it'll mess you up because your package didn't get there, and they'll probably refund you your money if they don't get it where it's supposed to go at a certain point. So when this FedEx plant shut down, all the conveyor belts and all the stuff that moves the packages around and stuff, something was wrong somewhere in one of those machines, and the whole thing shut down. The whole operation shut down. So all the people who are working, all the employees, everything, they can't do their jobs because the machines are not working. So the manager who runs this plant, he is like going crazy. He's sweating bullets because he's like, man, I'm gonna lose my job if I don't get this thing working again quickly. So he started calling around and found an expert who knew how to fix these types of machines. At least he knew who to call. Found an expert who knows how to fix these types of machines. Calls the guy, says, I need to get here ASAP and fix these machines because this thing needs to get working now because these packages got to be out of here and they got to get shipped and they got to get there by tomorrow or we're going to lose a ton of money. I'm probably going to get fired. You need to get here ASAP. So the guy was able to come. He came ASAP and the manager told him what was wrong. The machine stopped working. So the guy looked around for a little bit, and this is all of like 30 seconds. He looks around for a little bit. Then he walks over to a certain part of the machine, opens it up. He looks inside of it. He pulls out a screwdriver. He adjusts one little screw on the machine. He adjusts the screw with a little screwdriver. It took him like 10 seconds to do the adjustment. Then he closed the door, pushed the button, and all of a sudden everything started working all over again. And everybody in the factory started working and everything was just back to normal. Now the manager who was running the plant, he says to the mechanic or the person who came out and fixed things, he says, hey man, you saved my job, you saved my career. Thanks a lot for that. Hey, how much do I owe you? And the mechanic who had been working, his work time was all of like 3 minutes, not counting his travel time to get there. All of 3 minutes he had been working. And the manager asked him how much to owe you. The guy said $10,000. And now the manager who's running the place is looking at this guy like, wait, how are you gonna charge you 10? He didn't say anything. He's going through this in his mind. He says, okay, $10,000, sir. All right. Would you please give me an itemized invoice for how much I owe you? And the mechanic who had fixed the machine said, sure, I'll give you an itemized invoice right now. Just give me a pen and paper and I'll write it down for you. So they grab him a pen and paper and the mechanic writes down on the pen and paper, item number 1, turning the screw. He charged them $1 for turning the screw. Item number 2 on the invoice. There was only 2 items on the invoice. Item number 2, knowing which screw to turn. He charged them $9,999 for a total of $10,000. And he handed that sheet of paper right over to the manager who was standing there watching him write it. And manager said, all right, you're absolutely right. And he paid him his $10,000. The guy left and everybody lived happily ever after. The whole point here, point number 2, you got to know which page to turn to. If you don't know which piece of information to use, what piece of information do you need to apply, then it doesn't matter if you got the right book. Point number 3, today's topic is how to pass the open book test of life. Now you got to ask yourself, how do you know that you have found the right information? How do you know that the page that you turn to in the book is the right page for you to be on? Because as we already know, as I said, there's so much information out there in the world. Even if you're on the right website, even if you're talking to the right person, how do you know that you have found what you need? I mean, listen, you could hire somebody as a coach, but if you don't ask that coach the right questions, if you don't properly explain your challenges and your needs and your desires to the coach cannot help you as well as they want to help you. If the coach asks you questions and you're not truthful and honest in the way that you answer the questions, then the coach cannot be as effective as they need to be, even though you paid the coach, because you don't know which information you need to ask for, or if you found the right information, or if this person is even the right person. If you're looking to hire somebody for your company, any of you who runs a business and you're looking to hire a person, if you don't ask the right questions during the interview process, you might end up hiring the wrong person, and it will make your business worse than it is right now, simply because you failed to ask the right questions. Not because you hired the wrong person. You hired the wrong person because your failure in asking the right questions. Even though the book was wide open the whole time, you failed the open book test because you didn't have the right process in place. So the question you got to ask yourself is, how do I know I have found the right information? How will I know that when I apply this is actually going to work? This is a very important question that you must ask yourself, and you must figure out what your process is for identifying that you found the right information, because this is the crux of why many people become pigs, and that is PIG. What does that stand for? I'm not talking about the animal. Pigs means professional information gatherers. Many people become professional information gatherers, pigs, simply because they have no process or system or strategy for identifying when they have found the right information. So all they do is just consume more and more and more and more information their entire lives, with no rhyme or reason as to knowing whether they got the right information or when they have the right information. No way of testing to see if they got the right information. So they just keep taking in information because it feels like they're doing something productive. And then they end up accomplishing nothing, but they've achieved nothing, but they have consumed all of this information because it feels like work, but they haven't actually achieved anything. Remember that we're in the performance and results-based business, not in the consumption-based business, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't know that you found the right information, you will be a mindless consumer of information. Now, I already did an episode already telling you, stop your mindless information consumption. That was masterclass number 1466. And I told you about being a pig. First of all, in my book, Work on Your Game, but I also told you not to be a pig in masterclass number 208. Do not be a pig, from back in 2016. So if you haven't heard those two masterclasses that I just referred to, make sure you go check those out. Point number 4. Today's topic is how to pass the open book test of life. I told you there are 5 questions you got to ask and answer properly. Number 4, how do you interpret the information? So let's say you hired a coach and you start asking your coach questions and your coach is giving you information. How do you know how to use that information? How do you know how to interpret it and make sense of it to yourself? Because just because they told you something doesn't mean you're going to be able to go and do something with it if you don't understand exactly where it's coming from and why it's coming the way that it's coming. If you read another person's book, they can tell you everything that they know, but can you interpret that information and make it make sense to you and for you in your situation? Because in their book, they're going to tell you how they went through their situation. They may even tell you how to apply it in your situation, but your situation is specific. All right, there's some specifics to your situation that another person is not going to be able to cover in a book unless they write it for a specific, very deep, specific niche audience, which they may not have done when it comes to you personally. How are you going to interpret that information and know that it's the right info for you? How do you know the info that you found makes sense? Definition of interpret means to explain the meaning of. How can you explain the meaning of the information that you take in to know that it is the right information? Or are you going to leave yourself in the dark and you end up using the wrong information simply because you ask yourself the wrong question? How do you interpret information? This is a question that you must ask and you must answer. If you fail to answer this question correctly, you will have a problem. You will consume a lot of information, not be able to make sense of the information. Therefore, even though you may have the right information right there in front of you, you won't know what to do with it because you have no way of interpreting, no system for interpreting that information. So you got to develop your interpretation skills. Any of you ever traveled to a foreign country or talked to somebody who did not speak the same language as you, and they were talking to you, they were clearly communicating with you, but you couldn't understand what the hell they were saying. Therefore, you couldn't do what you needed to do with that person or tell them what you needed to tell them, and they couldn't tell you what they needed to tell you. I remember when I first went to, where's a place that this would be a good example. Probably the first place that I played professionally, which was in Lithuania. There were times where I would come across a person who did not speak English. A lot of the young people there spoke English. I was 23 years old at the time. A lot of the young people there spoke English, but people who were older, probably in their mid 30s and up, did not speak English. So if I was trying to communicate, I remember I would go to restaurants and I could not speak to the waitresses because I did not know how to speak English. So I found one meal that I could kind of understand what it meant, and I ordered the exact same meal over and over and over again every single time, simply because I did not have the tools, I didn't have the resources for interpreting what was on that menu to know what else I might want to try. So this is one of the times where your lack of interpretation can cost you. If you're ever in a place in your life where something's being communicated but you can't quite understand it, that means you have an interpretation problem, and you need to fix that ASAP, because it may be the information that you need, but if you can't interpret it, you can't use it. Point number 5, today's topic is how to pass the open book test of life. How do you implement what you found? Now you got the information, you asked the right question, you know it is the right information, you have interpreted it properly. All right, now you got to actually do something. Now you got to perform. Remember, I told you we're in a performance-based business. It's not an information gathering-based business. You got the information, you know it's right. Now you got to do something with it. Now you must perform and produce a result with that information. We call this implementation. You ever have somebody give you information and you knew it was accurate information, but at the same time that you knew it was accurate, you had no idea what the hell to do with it? You ever been in that situation? You ever given somebody some information and you know it was perfect information? You had used it yourself, so it was already vetted, personally by you. You knew this was the right information, but then they didn't do anything with it. They didn't do a damn thing with the information you had given them. Even though you knew it was the right information, even though you knew it was accurate, even though they saw you use it and saw you produce results with it, they didn't do a damn thing with it. Why? Because they had a failure in implementation. This is where the consulting and coaching industry comes from. It exists because of implementation. The fact that people want to hire someone not because they don't know what to do, but because they want someone to help them, do it with them, do it for them, or put a foot in their asses to make sure they implement the information that they take in. Coaches and consultants do not give you new information for the most part. They're not telling you something that you don't know. They're not telling you something that you can't Google or that you can't find in a book that costs you $20, but you pay 20 grand to a coach or a consultant. Why? Because they are telling you not what to do with it, but they're making sure they put a foot in your ass so that you actually do it, or they do it with you, or if you pay them enough, they'll do it for you. If you fail at implementation, then you fail, period. I mean, life is an implementation world. Life is an implementation business. Let's put it that way. As I already told you, we're in a performance-based and a results-based business. So if you do no implementation, implementation is a verb. To implement is an action word. All right, that's what verbs are, right? Action words. So if you don't take action, then it's impossible for you to perform. And if you don't perform, it's impossible for you to produce a result. This is where implementation comes in. This is the most important part of the open book test. If you take an open book test in school and you know you found the right page in the right book and you got the right answer, but you don't write down the answer on the sheet, do you get credit for that on the test? No. If you don't mark the right answers on when I was in school, we had the Scantrons. If you don't mark the right answer on the Scantron sheet, do you get credit for knowing it? No. So you have to implement the information that you have. Just because you know the right information, if you have not used it, then it doesn't matter. You probably wouldn't believe how many times somebody has come to me and told me, hey, I know this or I know that. And then they'll say, I know this part or I know that part, but I want to ask you about this part. I say, well, if you knew the part that you said you knew, you wouldn't be asking me the question that you're asking. Obviously, you don't know it because you have not implemented it yet. All right, people all the time, people try to tell me that they know stuff that they never actually done. If you have not, this is why I tell you, you don't really know something until you've done it. Because if you knew it, then you would be implementing it. You would already be doing it, and you wouldn't have the problem that you have. You wouldn't have the questions that you had if you were already implementing the information that you claim to know. And this is what I tell people. Again, I say this all the time. You do not know something until you have done it. How many things do you think you know, but you haven't done it yet? How to know whether to take someone seriously. Masterclass 1245, one way, take a look at what they've actually done. A lot of people claim that they know something, but they haven't even taken any action. What do you do when you don't know where to begin? That's Masterclass number 858. You never know something until you have actually taken action. And I know I have a masterclass on this. I'm looking through it right now. I don't see it right now. If you can't teach it, then you don't know it. Masterclass number 556, perfect topic. Because you're not going to be able to teach something until you've actually done it. You can't teach someone how to do something that you've never done yourself. It makes no sense. You're going to stumble at some point. Somebody's going to ask you a question that you can't answer, and then you're going to get exposed. Don't be that person. Let's recap today's topic, which is how to pass life's open book tests. Usually when we were in school, we would get happy when we had an open book test because we think it's going to be easy. But life is an open book test. Is it easy? Point number one. Which book are you going to look in? You got to answer these questions. Which book do you look in? Open book test is great to take, but there are a lot of books out there. So you got to know which book to actually choose. Google is a book that has every book. All right. So even though you have access to Google, you had access to Google your whole damn life, right? Or at least for the last 20 years. All right, has life been easy? Has everything been perfect? I mean, you got access to all the information. What's the problem? I had a piece on my car that I needed, didn't know what it was called because I didn't know where to look. And until I figured out where to look, I couldn't get that piece. Even though the piece only cost $2, I couldn't use my car because I had no idea where to look for the information. Until I knew the name of the piece, this missing part was costing me. Point number 2, which page do you turn to? Books can be very long and they got a lot of information in them. You gotta know which page to turn to. This FedEx plant manager, his plant shut down. He called someone to come fix it. The guy, the mechanic, fixed it in 3 minutes and he charged him 10 grand. $1 for turning the screw and $9,999 for knowing which screw to turn. It is infinitely more valuable to choose wisely than it is to even do certain things. That's why I tell you, choosing wisely is more important than working hard. Point number 3, how do you know that you found the right information? With so much info out there, how can you know when you have found what exactly you need? It's a very important question. It's the crux of why many people become professional information gatherers. They have no strategy for knowing when they found the right information, so they become mindless consumers of information. Point number 4, how do you interpret the information? How do you know the info you got makes sense? The definition of interpret is to explain the meaning of it. If you cannot explain the meaning of the information that you will have no idea if the information is useful or not. Point number 5, how do you implement the information? You don't know something until you have done it. If you have not implemented something, implement is an action word, it means doing something. If you have not implemented the information that you will have no idea whether it is accurate or not, or if it's even the right information. You may have to go all the way back to point number 1. This is where the consulting and coaching industry comes from, not because they're giving you brand new information, but because they're either doing it for you, doing it with you, or putting a foot in your ass to make sure it gets done, to make sure that you actually implement the things that you claim to know. This is how you pass the open book test of life. Don't fail anymore. Work on your game. Dre all day.